The Galactic Union military station floated quietly in deep space. It was one of the largest stations ever built. From far away, it looked like a giant silver ring hanging in darkness. Thousands of ships moved around it every day. Soldiers from hundreds of worlds trained there. Inside the station, today was different. Very different. The grand hall was filled with people. Long lines of soldiers stood beside each other. Humans, Carthans, Vexians, Drells, and many other races waited silently. Gray uniforms covered the room like an endless ocean. No one talked. No one moved. Even breathing felt loud. Everyone knew something important was about to happen. Near the back of the room stood human cadet Ethan Cole. Ethan was only 19 years old. He was still a trainee. Compared to the experienced soldiers around him, he looked young. Very young. His uniform was clean, but simple. No medals. No high rank. No special marks. Just another human cadet. Ethan looked around slowly. Something felt strange. Very strange. People looked nervous. He noticed alien officers whispering quietly. Some looked toward the giant entrance doors at the front. Some looked at the floor. Some looked scared. Ethan leaned slightly toward another human cadet beside him. "What is happening?" he asked quietly. The cadet swallowed. "You really don't know?" Ethan shook his head. The cadet looked around before speaking. "He is coming." Ethan frowned. "He?" The cadet looked nervous. "The commander." For a moment Ethan stared. Then he laughed a little. "The commander?" But the other cadet was not laughing. Not even a little. Ethan slowly stopped smiling. Then suddenly, poof, a heavy sound shook the room. Everyone jumped. The giant metal doors at the front began opening. Slowly, very slowly, the room became completely silent. Even the air felt frozen. Ethan looked forward. Darkness waited behind the opening doors. Then footsteps appeared. Heavy footsteps. Thud, thud, thud. Each step echoed across the massive hall. And then he appeared. The alien commander. He was huge. Almost 8 feet tall. Dark black armor covered his body. Strange silver lines glowed across the metal surface. His skin looked rough, almost like stone. His eyes glowed blue. Cold blue. Eyes without warmth. Eyes without kindness. Ethan had heard stories. Everyone had. Entire planets surrendered after hearing his name. Entire armies ran away before battles even started. People called him many names. Destroyer of worlds. The Iron Shadow. Deathwalker. No one knew which stories were true. But looking at him now, Ethan started believing all of them. The commander entered slowly. Behind him walked heavily armed guards. Nobody moved. Nobody dared move. Then something happened. One by one, soldiers lowered their heads. Humans lowered their heads. Aliens lowered their heads. Officers lowered their heads. Even high-ranking commanders lowered their heads. Like waves moving through water. Ethan looked around. Then blinked. Why was everyone doing that? Slowly he looked back at the commander. The commander kept walking. His footsteps echoed again. Thud, thud, thud. Suddenly Ethan felt someone pulling his sleeve. The human cadet beside him whispered, "Lower your head." Ethan looked confused. "What?" "Do it." Ethan looked forward again. But something inside him refused. He did not know why. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe he simply hated fear. So Ethan stayed still. He kept his head up. Seconds passed. Then Ethan noticed something. The footsteps had stopped. Silence. Complete silence. Slowly Ethan looked up. The commander was standing directly in front of him. The room suddenly felt smaller. Much smaller. The giant alien stared down at him. Blue eyes locked onto Ethan's face. People nearby looked terrified. Someone whispered, "Oh no!" Someone else closed their eyes. Ethan could hear nervous breathing all around him. The commander spoke. His voice was deep, cold, heavy. "Human." Ethan swallowed. But he stood straight. "Yes." The commander stared at him for several seconds. Long seconds. Painful seconds. Then he asked, "Why are you standing?" Ethan blinked. He looked around. Then looked back. Because I'm already standing. A few people almost stopped breathing. Did he really say that? Was he insane? Even Ethan suddenly realized what he had said. But it was too late now. The commander's eyes narrowed. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then slowly, very slowly, the commander stepped closer. Now his face was inches away. Ethan could see small battle scars across his skin. Could see scratches on his armor. Could feel the pressure of his presence. The commander looked directly into Ethan's eyes. Then he spoke 4 words. 4 simple words. Words that froze the entire room. Kneel. The pause. Or die. Fear exploded across the hall. Some soldiers looked away immediately. Others stared at Ethan with pity. Everyone knew what happened next. Everyone knew this story. The commander gives an order. People obey. Or people disappear. Very simple. Very final. Ethan felt his heart beating faster. His hands wanted to shake. His legs wanted to move. Every part of his body screamed at him. Kneel. Kneel now. Kneel now before you die. But Ethan stayed still. The commander waited. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. 15 seconds. Still Ethan did not move. Then suddenly, Ethan smiled. Just a little. And quietly he said, "Read page 11. The commander's face changed instantly. His eyes widened. For the first time, fear appeared inside them. Silence covered the grand hall. No one moved. No one even blinked. The words, "Read page 11, still floated in the air like something alive. Ethan immediately noticed the change. The commander was no longer looking at him with anger. Something else appeared in his glowing blue eyes. Something strange. Fear. Real fear. For only a second it appeared, but Ethan saw it clearly. And he was not the only one. People around them noticed too. Whispers slowly began spreading through the room. What happened? What did he say? Page 11? What does that even mean? The commander suddenly grabbed Ethan's uniform collar. Gasps filled the hall. The giant alien lifted Ethan slightly off the floor as if he weighed nothing. Ethan's feet barely touched the ground. The commander pulled him close. Very close. His glowing eyes stared directly into Ethan's face. "Who told you that?" he asked. His voice was different now. Before, his voice sounded cold and powerful. Now there was something hidden inside it. Something nervous. Ethan looked back calmly. No one. The commander's grip became tighter. Lies. Ethan could feel the pressure around his neck, but somehow he stayed calm. Maybe he should have been terrified. Maybe he should have apologized. Maybe he should have begged. But strangely, his fear was becoming smaller. Because now Ethan understood something. The commander was afraid. Not of Ethan himself. Of something else. Something connected to page 11. "What does it say?" Ethan asked quietly. The commander stared at him. For several seconds he said nothing. Nothing at all. Then suddenly, he threw Ethan back down. Ethan stumbled but managed to stay standing. The room remained frozen. Nobody understood what was happening anymore. This was impossible. The commander feared nobody. That was what the galaxy believed. For 20 years his name alone had ended wars. For 20 years planets surrendered before battles even started. Fear followed him everywhere. But now, the impossible was standing in front of everyone. The commander slowly turned away from Ethan. His breathing looked heavier. One of his guards stepped closer. "Commander?" the guard asked carefully. No answer. The commander stood still. Completely still. Ethan looked around. People looked confused. Alien officers whispered to each other. Human soldiers stared with wide eyes. Even the guards looked nervous now. Ethan slowly fixed his uniform. Then he looked at the commander again. He had seen something. Something very small. The commander's hand was shaking. Very slightly. But it was shaking. Ethan frowned. This made no sense. How could one sentence do this? Then suddenly a voice broke the silence. An older officer stepped forward. His gray uniform showed many medals. His face looked serious. "Commander," he said carefully, "permission to ask a question." The commander slowly turned. The room felt colder. The officer swallowed. What is page 11? Nobody breathed. Everyone wanted the answer. Everyone. The commander stared at the officer. Seconds passed. Long, uncomfortable seconds. Then his eyes narrowed. Silence. His voice exploded through the room. People immediately looked down. The older officer stepped back quickly. No one spoke again. No one wanted to become the next target. But now curiosity had already spread. Questions were everywhere. Ethan could almost feel them. Page 11. Page 11. Page 11. Then Ethan remembered something. 3 weeks earlier, he had been inside the station archives. He had gone there for a simple history assignment. Most cadets hated history lessons. Ancient wars. Old treaties. Dead civilizations. Boring things. But Ethan liked reading strange things. Especially hidden things. Especially forgotten things. While searching old files, he found something strange. A damaged military report. Most of the pages were missing. Some were corrupted. Some words could not even be read. But one thing had caught Ethan's attention. Page 11. He remembered staring at it. Remembered reading strange words. Very strange words. At first they seemed meaningless. But now, standing here, looking at the commander's face, Ethan suddenly realized they mattered. Very much. A cold feeling ran through his body. Could that damaged report be connected to this? Impossible. Right? Suddenly, beep. A sharp sound echoed through the hall. Everyone looked upward. Red lights suddenly appeared across the ceiling. Then another sound came. Beep, beep, beep. An automated voice spoke. Priority security alert. People looked around nervously. Priority security alert. The commander immediately looked upward. For the first time since entering the room, his face changed again. This time not fear. Pure shock. One of the guards looked confused. What is happening? No answer. The commander slowly looked toward Ethan. Then toward the ceiling. Then back toward Ethan again. Ethan's stomach tightened. Something was very wrong. Very, very wrong. The station voice spoke again. Unauthorized access detected. People looked around. Confusion spread everywhere. What access? Who entered? What is happening? Then the final words came. Words that made the commander completely freeze. Accessing restricted archive. File 11. The room went completely silent. The commander's face lost all color. And Ethan suddenly realized something terrible. He had accidentally opened something that was supposed to stay hidden. Something that someone had buried long ago. Something the galaxy was never supposed to see. The grand hall stood frozen. No whispers. No movement. No sound except the slow blinking of red warning lights above. Beep, beep, beep. Every flash painted the room red for a moment, then darkness returned again. Human cadet Ethan Cole stared at the commander. The commander stared at nothing. For the first time since entering the hall, the giant alien looked completely lost. Not angry. Not powerful. But around the room, nervous soldiers looked at each other. Nobody understood what was happening anymore. Minutes ago everyone thought Ethan was about to die. Now the most feared commander in the galaxy looked like a man seeing a ghost. Then the station voice spoke again. Restricted archive opening. People looked toward the massive screen at the front of the hall. The giant black display suddenly came alive. White lines flashed across it. Unknown symbols appeared, then disappeared. Data moved across the screen quickly. Some officers looked confused. Some looked worried. The commander suddenly shouted, "Turn it off." His voice shook the room. "Turn it off now." Several station workers immediately ran toward control stations. Their hands moved across glowing screens. Nothing happened. One worker looked terrified. "We can't." The commander turned sharply. "What?" The worker swallowed. "Something locked the system." "What locked it?" I don't know." People began whispering again. Confusion spread everywhere. Ethan looked at the screen. Something strange was happening. Words slowly began appearing. Classified report. War archive. Level Omega. The commander looked like stone. Completely still. One of his guards stepped closer. "Commander, what is this?" No answer. Then another line appeared. "Historical record, forbidden conflict." Forbidden conflict? Ethan frowned. He had studied galactic history for years. There had never been any forbidden conflict. He knew about the Great Expansion Wars. He knew about the border rebellions. He knew about the machine uprising. But this? Nothing. He had never heard this name before. Slowly more words appeared. Date, 247 years ago. The room suddenly became quiet again. People stared. 247 years. This happened before most current governments even existed. Before humans had reached the stars. Before many races joined the Galactic Union. The commander slowly whispered, "No." Ethan barely heard him. Then images suddenly appeared on the screen. Dark space. Ships. Thousands of ships. Millions. The room gasped. The fleets were enormous. Bigger than anything Ethan had ever seen. Huge black battleships stretched across space endlessly. Explosions covered entire sectors. Stars burned. Planets broke apart. People stared with wide eyes. No one had ever seen war on this scale. Then the station voice continued. Conflict involved 92 civilizations. Gasps filled the room. 92. 92 civilizations fighting together? Impossible. No enemy should require that many worlds. The commander lowered his head. Ethan noticed sweat on his face. Actual sweat. Then another line appeared. Result: catastrophic failure. Silence. Absolute silence. The room looked shocked. Failure? 92 civilizations lost? Against who? Ethan felt his heart beating faster. Everyone wanted the answer now. Slowly, very slowly, new words appeared. Enemy designation unknown. People frowned. Unknown? How could an enemy be unknown? Then images changed again. A battlefield appeared. Burning ships floated in darkness. Broken metal covered space. Bodies drifted silently. Destroyed fleets stretched endlessly. Then someone whispered, "My God." Ethan looked carefully. There was something moving. Far away. Small figures. Humans. Ancient humans. The room suddenly became confused. What? No. Humans? Ethan stared. The humans looked different. Old military uniforms. Primitive ships. Old weapons. This was impossible. Humans had not even joined the galaxy back then. Had they? Then another line appeared. Unexpected species involvement detected. People looked closer. The report continued. Species, human. Shock exploded through the room. Ethan felt cold. No way. Humans had not reached deep space 200 years ago. History said so. History had to be right? The commander slowly closed his eyes. Like someone remembering a nightmare. Then suddenly another image appeared. Everyone stared. An enormous battlefield covered the screen. Alien ships burned everywhere. The unknown enemy ships surrounded them from every direction. Millions of soldiers were dying. The 92 civilizations were losing. Losing badly. Then small human ships suddenly entered the battle. Tiny ships. Weak ships. Old ships. Compared to everyone else, they looked useless. The room became confused again. Those things fought. No chance. They're too small. But then the report continued. Human action. Refused retreat order. Ethan frowned. Refused retreat? The next line appeared. Human action. Continued attack despite 87% losses. Silence. Another line appeared. Human action. Continued attack despite impossible survival probability. Another line. Human action. Kept advancing. People looked at each other. Another line. Humans kept advancing. Humans kept advancing. The same sentence repeated across the screen. Over and over. The room felt colder with every word. Even Ethan felt strange now. Very strange. Then suddenly, the final line appeared. A line written in red. A line that made the commander open his eyes immediately. A line that made every person in the room stop breathing. Page 11. Slowly, one final message appeared underneath it. Warning, never force humans to kneel. Then another sentence appeared. Because humans fight hardest after losing everything. The commander looked toward Ethan. Ethan looked back. Neither spoke. Because suddenly both understood the same thing. Page 11 was never a report. It was a warning. The grand hall felt colder than space itself. No one spoke. No one moved. The giant screen still glowed at the front of the room. The warning remained there. Never force humans to kneel. Because humans fight hardest after losing everything. The words looked simple. Very simple. But somehow they felt heavier than mountains. Ethan stared at the screen. Then slowly looked toward the commander. The giant alien had not moved. Not even once. His glowing blue eyes remained fixed on the warning. Almost like he was seeing something else. Something far away. Something only he could see. Around the room, whispers slowly began spreading again. What does it mean? Humans were there? No one knew this happened. Why was this hidden? Questions moved through the crowd like waves. But nobody had answers. Then suddenly, the commander spoke. No. His voice sounded low. No. No. People looked at him. Slowly he stepped forward. One step. Then another. Then another. His heavy footsteps echoed again. Thud. 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 But they sounded different now. Before, every step carried power. Now every step felt heavy. Like he was carrying invisible weight. He stopped directly beneath the giant screen. Then looked upward. For several long seconds he said nothing. Then quietly he spoke. The report is incomplete. The room became still. Ethan narrowed his eyes. Incomplete? The commander slowly turned around. His face looked different now. Older. Tired. Like years had suddenly appeared on him. That was not the whole story. Nobody interrupted him. Nobody dared. The commander looked across the room. At humans. At aliens. At soldiers. At officers. Then he continued. Those human ships. He paused. Were not military ships. Confusion spread immediately. Ethan frowned. Not military? Then what were they? The commander looked back at the screen. They were transport ships. Silence. Complete silence. People blinked. Some looked confused. Some looked shocked. Transport ships? Ethan stared. That made no sense. Transport ships carried supplies. Food. Equipment. People. They were not warships. They were not supposed to fight. Then why had they entered a battlefield? The commander answered before anyone asked. They were evacuating civilians. Ethan felt his stomach tighten. The commander continued speaking. The unknown enemy attacked several human colonies. Images on the screen suddenly changed. People gasped. Burning cities appeared. Destroyed buildings. Smoke covering entire worlds. Children running. Families hiding. Fear everywhere. Ethan looked carefully. The people in the images looked terrified. Completely helpless. The commander slowly lowered his head. The enemy destroyed everything. His voice became quieter. They destroyed homes. Another image. They destroyed cities. Another image. They destroyed planets. Another image. They destroyed families. Silence. Absolute silence. Ethan suddenly understood why the commander looked different. Why fear existed in his eyes. He was remembering. Not reading. Remembering. The commander slowly looked upward again. And then, he stopped speaking. For several seconds nothing happened. The room waited. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed loudly. Then finally he continued. And then humanity changed. Ethan felt cold. Very cold. The commander looked directly at him. I remember it now. His eyes looked distant. Like he was no longer standing inside the hall. Like he was standing inside old memories. I remember seeing their ships. The screen changed again. Small human ships appeared. Tiny compared to giant war fleets. Simple. But something looked strange. There were too many. Far too many. Thousands. Tens of thousands. Hundreds of thousands. Endless numbers. One officer whispered, "Where did they get that many ships?" The commander slowly answered, "They didn't." Confused looks appeared everywhere. Then he said something that made the room freeze again. "They used everything." Ethan frowned. Everything? The commander looked at the crowd. Cargo ships. Image change. Mining ships. Image change. Transport ships. Image change. Construction ships. Image change. Civilian ships. Image change. People stared with wide eyes. None of them were warships. Not one. But humans sent them anyway. Ethan slowly realized something. Humans had not joined the battle because they wanted victory. They joined because they wanted revenge. The commander continued quietly. They knew they would die. Silence. They knew they could not win. Silence. They came anyway. The room felt heavy. Very heavy. Ethan looked around. Nobody whispered anymore. Nobody moved anymore. Because everyone was imagining it now. Millions of ordinary people entering impossible battles. Not because they expected survival. Not because they expected rewards. But because someone had hurt the people they loved. Then suddenly the commander looked directly at Ethan. His glowing eyes narrowed slightly. When I said kneel, he paused. I remembered something. Ethan stared. The commander slowly raised his hand. His fingers shook slightly. I remembered hearing those same words before. Silence. The room stared. Ethan felt his heartbeat becoming faster. What happened? Ethan asked quietly. The commander looked at him. Then his face slowly became pale. Very pale. And for the first time, the most feared commander in the galaxy looked truly afraid. Because he whispered only 4 words. They laughed at us. The words stayed inside the room. They laughed at us. No one understood. No one moved. The grand hall became so quiet that Ethan could hear the soft electric sound coming from the giant screen. The commander stood completely still. His eyes looked distant again. Like he was standing in another place. Another time. Ethan slowly looked at him. What do you mean? He asked. The commander did not answer immediately. His breathing became slower. He turned and looked at the old battle images on the screen. Burning ships. Broken planets. Dark space filled with death. Then finally he spoke. Everyone believed humans would break. His deep voice echoed through the hall. The enemy believed it. He looked toward Ethan. The Alliance believed it. Then his eyes moved across the room. And even I believed it. No one said anything. The commander walked slowly forward. Heavy footsteps echoed again. Thud. 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 We looked at humans and saw weakness. The screen changed again. Ancient human colonies appeared. Small cities. Simple ships. Tiny fleets. Compared to powerful galactic civilizations, they looked small. Insignificant. We saw a young race. Another image appeared. Human workers carrying supplies. Human families smiling. Human children playing. We saw soft people. Another image. Farm worlds. Research stations. Civilian ships. We saw builders. The commander narrowed his eyes. We were wrong. Silence. Absolute silence. Then the images suddenly changed. Everything became darker. Red warning symbols appeared. Emergency signals flashed. Ancient recordings started playing. The room watched. A human ship appeared on the screen. Its engines were damaged. Smoke poured from the sides. Fire covered almost half the ship. The ship should have stopped moving. But it didn't. One officer frowned. Why are they still flying? No answer. Another recording appeared. Then another. Then another. Each ship looked destroyed. Each ship looked ready to explode. But every single one kept moving forward. Toward the enemy. Toward certain death. Toward impossible odds. The commander slowly spoke again. They lost their homes. Another image. They lost their planets. Another image. They lost their families. Another image. But they kept coming. Ethan stared silently. Then something appeared on the screen. Audio recording detected. Ancient transmission recovered. The room looked up. Static filled the hall. Ka. Broken sounds. Damaged signals. Then suddenly a human voice appeared. Tired, but calm. Command, this is civilian transport ship Orion. Static interrupted. Enemy numbers too large. Static. No survivors expected. Silence. The room listened carefully, requesting permission to retreat. Several seconds passed. Then another voice answered. Negative. People looked confused. Negative? No retreat? The first voice returned. Understood. Silence. Then something strange happened. The human pilot laughed. Actually laughed. Not nervous laughter. Not scared laughter. Real laughter. The room looked confused. Ethan frowned. Why was he laughing? The pilot spoke again. Guess we're staying. Then more voices appeared. Many voices. Different ships. Different people. But every voice sounded strangely calm. Joining attack route. We're with you. Let's finish this. Moving forward. See you on the other side. More voices. More ships. More people. None sounded afraid. Not one. The commander slowly closed his eyes. When the enemy heard them, he paused. They thought humans had lost their minds. The room remained silent. The commander opened his eyes again. No species fights after losing everything. He looked directly at Ethan. No species smiles before death. His voice became lower. No species keeps attacking impossible enemies. Silence. Then he looked back at the screen. But humans did. The image suddenly changed again. This time the battlefield looked different. Thousands of human ships moved forward. No organized formations. No perfect lines. No military strategy. Only movement. Endless movement. Some ships exploded. Others kept moving. More exploded. More kept moving. Fin. Like a giant wave. A wave that refused to stop. Then suddenly one officer whispered, "My God!" People stared. Because now they noticed something. Behind every destroyed ship, 3 more appeared. Behind 3, 10 more appeared. Behind 10, hundreds appeared. The enemy ships slowly began moving backward. Then more backward. Then more. The commander looked down. Slowly. Very slowly. They were afraid. Ethan looked at him. The enemy? The commander raised his eyes. No. Silence. His glowing eyes moved across the room. The galaxy. Nobody breathed. Because everyone suddenly understood. Humans did not win because they had stronger weapons. They did not win because they had bigger ships. They won because fear changed sides. The enemy saw something impossible. Something terrifying. Something they could not understand. People who had already lost everything, and still kept coming. Then suddenly the station lights flickered. Beep. Beep. Warning. New words appeared across the giant screen. The commander's face instantly changed. Color disappeared. Fear returned. Because written across the screen were words nobody expected. Final record found. Below it appeared one line. One final line. One final message hidden after page 11. And slowly, the message started opening. Humanity. The giant screen glowed across the grand hall. No one moved. No one spoke. The final message was still loading. The commander stood frozen. Ethan looked around the room. Everyone stared at the screen. Humans. Aliens. Officers. Guards. Even the station workers had stopped breathing. Because everyone knew something now. Whatever appeared next had scared the most feared commander in the galaxy. And that alone was enough. The red warning lights above continued flashing. Beep. 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 Then slowly, words appeared. Final record found. Below it, another line formed. Displaying last battlefield transmission. The commander suddenly stepped forward. No. His voice sounded sharp. No, stop it. Nobody listened. Nobody could. The system was running by itself. Static filled the room. Kera. Broken sounds echoed through the hall. For several seconds nothing happened. Then a damaged video recording appeared. The image shook badly. Smoke covered the screen. Fire alarms screamed in the background. People running. People shouting. Everything looked chaotic. Then the camera finally focused. A human captain appeared. He looked exhausted. Blood ran down one side of his face. Burn marks covered his uniform. Behind him the ship looked destroyed. Lights flickered. Sparks flew everywhere. Someone nearby shouted, "Captain! Hull collapse in 2 minutes." Another voice screamed, "Engines dead." Another shouted, "We lost navigation." The room watched silently. This was real. Not history lessons. Not stories. Real people. Real fear. The captain looked toward the camera. For a moment he smiled. A tired smile. Then he spoke. "If anyone finds this..." Static interrupted his words. "The enemy thinks they already won." More explosions shook the recording. The captain grabbed a rail to stay standing. Behind him another crew member yelled, "Captain! Orders!" The captain looked back. Then smiled again. Actually smiled. "Forward." Silence covered the grand hall. Ethan felt cold. Very cold. The captain looked into the camera again. "We're civilians." He laughed softly. "Funny, right?" People in the room stared. The captain continued. "We were miners." The screen showed crew members. Old people. Young people. Ordinary people. Teachers. Different faces appeared. Engineers. More faces. Parents. More faces. Just normal people. Ethan swallowed slowly. None of them looked like soldiers. Not one. Then the captain looked away for a second. His smile slowly disappeared. "But they touched our families." Silence. Absolute silence. That was their mistake. The commander lowered his eyes. Like he already knew these words. Like he had heard them before. The captain turned around. The camera moved with him. Outside the ship windows was darkness. Thousands of enemy ships waited ahead. Endless ships. Enough ships to destroy worlds. Someone whispered in the hall, "No chance. No chance at all." Then the captain gave his final order. "All ships. Static. Full power forward." Suddenly alarms exploded everywhere in the recording. Crew members started moving. People ran. Engines screamed. Lights flashed red. Then one final voice shouted, "For Earth." Another voice, "For home." Then hundreds joined. Thousands. The sound became one giant wave. "For home." The recording suddenly ended. Darkness covered the screen. Complete silence filled the hall. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Several officers stared at the floor. One alien soldier quietly wiped his eyes. Even some guards looked shaken. Ethan slowly turned toward the commander. The giant alien stood perfectly still. Then Ethan noticed something impossible. A small line of water moved down the commander's face. "A tear." The commander slowly looked up. His voice was barely above a whisper. "I was there." The room looked at him immediately. No one believed what they heard. The commander closed his eyes. "I fought in that battle." Shock spread across the hall. Ethan stared at him. The commander continued. "I watched them come." He opened his eyes again. "I watched impossible people do impossible things." His breathing became heavier. "I watched them keep fighting after losing everything." Silence. Then slowly he turned toward Ethan. For several seconds neither spoke. Then the commander walked toward him. Heavy footsteps echoed again. Thud. 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 Everyone watched. Everyone expected one thing. They expected anger. Punishment. The commander stopped directly in front of Ethan. The room froze. Then something impossible happened. Slowly, very slowly, the commander lowered his head. Not fully. Just enough. Gasps filled the room. Nobody believed what they were seeing. The most feared commander in the galaxy was stepping back. The commander looked at Ethan. Then quietly he said, "You knew." Ethan looked back calmly. "No." The commander frowned. Ethan smiled slightly. "I just read page 11. For a second silence remained. Then suddenly, the commander laughed. Not a cruel laugh. Not an angry laugh. A real laugh. And across the grand hall people finally understood something. Humanity's greatest weapon was never ships. Never armies. Never technology. It was simple. Humans could lose everything and still refuse to kneel.